Welcome to Brightly, You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we share soul-driven advice and topics to help you live more brightly in mind, body, and spirit. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and passions, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey, Amy, how are you?
I'm doing really great. I just like listening. You know how sometimes you just are like, yep, I've heard the intro a billion times and it just runs past you. And then sometimes you're like, are we shining our brightest? Like, are we so I have a question for you. And
I'm nervous because when I hear the intro, I'm like, why don't I have this memorized yet?
No, seriously, I don't know why I don't have it memorized yet either.
But I love the "Are you shining your brightest" thing, right?
Yeah. Are you shining your brightest? So I have a question for you. When we did the Moxie episode, you were talking about not having it. And I'm just wondering, do you have your Moxie back?
You have get your Moxie back. Yes and no. I guess that's a no. That's a no. If it's not a yes, it's a no, right?
Yeah, I think with Moxie, yes, definitely. Yeah.
So,
you look like you have your Moxie back.
Well, that's step one. Fake it till you make it, right? No, so I've been looking for inspiration, right? And so part of it is, there's a drive to it, right? Like there's this thing where you have to light your own fire. You can't wait for someone to do it for you. Yeah. And so trying to remind myself of that, but then there's just like that piece of waiting. And so I'm like, okay, let's look for inspiration. Let's see if we get excited about something, if that gets better.
I like that. Yeah.
So I can't for the life of me find it tonight, but I have a quote book, as you probably do too. Just like a little journal with a collection of quotes that I just love, but mostly they either inspire me or motivate me or just get me thinking in a different way, right? Getting me feeling better about myself, getting me motivated to do things, kind of like.
And just to clarify, this is a book, like your own book that you've written in. So when you see a quote, it's a collection of your quotes. I actually don't have one of those, but I am going to start one of those. I feel like I had one, on my high school notebooks. We would always do quotes, but I love that idea. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, and here I would have been so sure that you would have had that. So I also that's like predominantly what I used Pinterest for a decade ago when it came out, was just, people came up with these beautiful Canva-esque designs with all these quotes on it. And that's actually, I think that's where I may have seen for one of the first times, or it's definitely in my quote book, but be kind to the person you will be tomorrow. Right? We talk about that one a lot, and that's meant, it might give you a little bit of anxiety or guilt. I hope not. It's meant to inspire and motivate you. But I have some quotes that I just hate. How about you?
I want to hear what the ones that you hate. What is it in me that I would rather hear the ones that you hate than the ones that you love right now? I do want to hear the ones you love as well, but let's hear the ones you hate.
Well, there's okay. So the first one, I love to hate it. I hate it. And I'm happy I hate it.
Wow.
I think a lot of people would find this particular person, he is known to be inspiring, much like a lot of our historical figures that we're, meant to find inspiring. We've since learned more about him, and he's not the best individual, but that's not why I hate the quote. So the Dalai Lama, or no, that's not even who I was thinking. I was thinking of, never mind, we don't hate the Dalai Lama. For some reason, I was thinking it was Gandhi. But no, I'm glad I put notes in. So the Dalai Lama, a great figure, right? Very well-spoken, lots of quotes to get you to think and to just be your better self. One of his is, if you have willpower, then you can change anything. Okay, Amy, discuss. Why do you think I hate it?
Well,
or how do you feel about it?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I can tell you how I feel about it. When you have willpower, you can change anything. And I guess the way I feel about it is, well, I need more information. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what willpower? Willpower for what? What am I changing? Is it changing something in me? Is it what?
Yeah. Let's say you have a goal. A common one is weight loss, right? When it comes to willpower, that's something that comes up a lot, or just getting in shape, working out more, tackling some sort
I
of.
just don't understand willpower.
See, and to me, I don't know. I don't know where to attribute this to, or if I came up with it, or where I first heard it. But willpower is a depletable resource. You know what? I absolutely know who I heard that from. It was the No Meat Athlete guy. He's vegan. He's a runner. I think his name is Matt. We'll put it in the show notes. But willpower is a depletable resource. And that to me encompasses everything you need to know about achieving a goal. And that when you tell someone if they have willpower, they can change anything, they're like doomed to fail the second they don't have the willpower to do something.
That's what it is. Because when I hear that, I'm like, I can have willpower for a day, or maybe depending on what it is I'm trying to accomplish, maybe a month. But then I never thought of it as a depletable resource. I just felt it depleting from me.
Yeah. So
and then feeling really bad about myself.
Yes. So it's a phrase like that. If you have, you can blank is a shame-based statement, because the second you don't have it, you failed.
And you can't do it. Yeah.
You failed. Whereas, there's so many people that when it does come to like achieving a goal or something that's about like changing a habit, something that takes willpower, right? Like I'm not going to use TikTok anymore. I'm going to, do these things in the yard. I'm going to cook this. I'm going to cook food at home. I'm going to follow a budget, all of those things. A statement like, if you have willpower, then you can do it. The second you have a moment of failure, let's say you're great in the morning and then at 3 p.m. you fail a little bit, you stumble. Yeah. You're now more inclined to be like, well, day is ruined. I'll start over tomorrow. And then, you eat dessert, you order Amazon, you spend a bunch of money, you do whatever it is because you're like, oh, it doesn't matter. I already failed, right?
Whereas I may have failed really, really well.
Right? I love that snowballing. Yeah. Because then you're just like, what's the point? Or I'll start again tomorrow, or I'll start on the 1st, I'll start on a Monday, right? Like week is over. Instead of like looking at your day, like a sporting event, like it's in quarters, there are periods, there's a halftime, right? Like if willpower is,
I love it that you're using a sporting reference.
If it's a depletable resource, you get to halftime, you have some orange slices and you get back out on the field and you try again. So to me, when we look at willpower as a resource, you have to look at the things you can do to nourish that resource, right? If it's depletable, we want to make sure we're using it well. We want to find ways in which we can recharge it, right? Like we're no longer using fossil fuels. We're putting some solar panels up. We're getting some wind, wind turbines
You're
going.
The best at analogies.
Is that what those are?
I hope so.
But so I think when you look at your willpower, you have to look at what's stealing from it. Okay. And I think a lot of time it's those shame-based thoughts, right? And that snowball effect that you were talking about and things like that. And so what can you put in your life to be ready for that, right? For what's going to deplete it. But then what other resources can you use instead of willpower so that you're not taxing this depletable source, right?
Okay.
So like, for me,
sorry.
No, think out loud.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just for the first part of your statement, you have to front load some things, right? So that you've got those things that you can pull out of your pocket to be like, when this happens, then I do this thing. I eat that orange slice, right? But I want to hear about what the second part of what you said, what other things you could use if your willpower is depleting.
Yeah. So I talk all the time about Alan Watts and his viewpoint on discipline. And that is a skill. Discipline is a skill you can develop, whereas willpower is kind of a feeling, right?
Oh my gosh.
Willpower is not a skill. I don't see how it's a skill. I mean,
I like that concept. I had never thought of it that way, but I believe you because I don't know if you can strengthen willpower.
and I think when a lot of people use those quotes or tell you to have willpower, I think they're thinking about discipline. And to me,
You're right.
they're not synonyms. They're very different things. Because willpower to me, there's that exercise or experiment that they do with little kids where they give them a marshmallow and they put the marshmallow on a table. Yeah. And they're like, okay, you can either have one marshmallow now, or I'm going to leave for a minute and go to the bathroom. And when I come back, we can have 10 marshmallows, but you can't touch that one. If you want 10, you got to wait, or you can have one right now. And then you leave the room and go to the bathroom. And then like, they record these kids and some of them just sit patiently and wait. And other ones are completely tortured by the single marshmallow in front of them. And then some of them give in and eat it, right? And that to me is a demonstration of willpower. Some people just have it, some don't. And it depends. I think where willpower isn't a skill is like, there's something somebody could tell me like, hey, Tracy, if you wait, you can have more of this. I'm not going to care either way. I don't want the thing I'm waiting for.
Oh, that's a really good point. And so whether you wait or not has nothing to do with whether you have willpower or not.
Yeah. So when you like, it's that slightly triggering statement of like, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. And I was like, yeah, it does. Like,
I can attest to that actually.
Some of us like food. Some of us are food motivated and some people don't care. Right. And so it's not fair for that person to then get credited with willpower and having the willpower to avoid a non-nutritious treat that could, somebody else, it's all that they can think about. Right.
Well, you know what this is making me think of too. And I don't even know if you were thinking of talking about this at all, but so often when we have addictions, people are like, well, you just have to have willpower. And it's like, well, no, I literally am addicted to this thing and I need way more than just willpower.
The West Wing, the chief of staff, Leo McGarry, battles alcoholism in it. And what I love is there's, so he sought treatment for it. And then now he's an addict and he avoids it. And somebody that we've never met before in the show finds out about it and tells the press because she's worried and she's concerned, right? That somebody with so much power has such a big problem. So when he finds out who it is that went to the press instead of to him and things like that, he meets with her. And she says, well, why can't you just have one? And he responds, and this helped me understand addiction. Like I love Aaron Sorkin for this. He's just like, the problem is I don't just want one. I want 100.
Yeah.
So I can't have one because I would keep going. Right.
Right.
And so I think that's the difference between willpower and discipline. He was disciplined enough not to have the thing in the first place.
Right. He's disciplined. Right. Exactly. But not to stop after having the thing. Okay.
But discipline is also, I don't want to say it's a habit. It's a skill and it's a habit, and we trip up or our schedules or routines change or stressors come in. Right. And so again, that's that front loading. I love that term you use. And so some of it's like, personality trait in a sense. And we've talked before about personality isn't permanent. And so you can kind of develop and cultivate this, but persistence, you need to be a persistent person to achieve a goal or to avoid a thing or to overcome, that willpower piece, right?
Yeah, you sure do. Yeah.
Persist, right? Be someone who persists through what they're supposed to do. Cause that to me, that's an attitude, right? That's a personality thing. That's kind of, and it kind of helps because you can be a character, right? Like you can kind of come up with, it kind of like how Beyonce is Sasha Fierce when she's on stage, right?
I totally love that.
So when it comes to your goal or whatever you're trying to do or not to do, like create this version of you or this character that does that and act as them, right? Like how are they persistent? How do they have discipline? How do they respond? And I don't know. And then it's also drive, like what drives you. And so you have to know like what your intentions are, what your motivations are. Why do you really want this?
I feel like that is something that many people, myself included, until, fairly recently, not that recent, but that was a missing piece. What was the drive? What is my drive? What do I desire? What is my drive? Why do I want to do this? Because it's just easy to live your life, right? Just go about your day, live your life, tra la la, do the same thing day in and day out, and not change anything or not consider anything or not look at yourself and what you actually do want to be doing.
So like we think about our goals, and so you've shared before you want to be a published author, right? And so it's not even
Because
something
I got the writing down. I'm definitely a writer.
Yes. So that's
I'm just not a finisher.
Is you need to have the willpower to choose to stay with a story, right? So it's not that you need to take something out. You're not trying to punish yourself. You're not trying to live a different life. You're trying to add to your life. And you're just trying to get to that desired outcome. And that was a huge game changer this year when it came to my goal worksheets was, what's my why? Because in my head, when I think about like, oh, I want to be a runner, I want to, it's so easy to wake up in the morning and just get caught in that present day bias of like how I feel today is more important than the skills and the habits and things I need to develop today to be ready for 30 days from now.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so it's that present day bias where it's like, oh, I don't feel good. I'm not going to run. I'm going to get more sleep. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. But instead of being like, oh, I have to run, instead, I think about the why. I think about the desired outcome. I think about what I'm going to do. And I have intentions written for each of those goals so that when I wake up in the morning, I say my intentions, and then I am actively choosing whether or not to pursue them. Right.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, I'll run later. Oh, I can run tomorrow. It's like, oh man, like if I'm going to be ready for a race day, or if I'm going to, take this dance class, I have to be physically fit, and that's not going to happen overnight. Right. Like can't cram that into a weekend. It has to build try, over time.
But now you're getting me thinking, and I think I have to revisit my why, because for that aspect of my life, writing, becoming a published author, I think my why was just always like, because I'm creative and I have stories to tell. And apparently that's not really what it is. Yes, that's necessary. That's a necessary component. But what is my why? Where is the drive in order to be persistent, in order to be disciplined? So I feel like I've got some steps to take there. Yeah. And I have actually been writing more, but I think I do need to just step back and go back to the why. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me use you as an example. But when it comes to willpower, it's not always about a goal necessarily, or about the fun goals that we set at New Year's or, birthdays and things like that, or major milestones in our life. Sometimes willpower is about like, did I clean my kitchen floor this week? Right? Like, did I cook the food that I purchased? Right? Did I make the meal? Did I do basic life tasks, or did I let life get in the way? Did I let my moxie, my energy levels get in the way?
That's a really good point. And I wouldn't have necessarily thought of willpower in that aspect, but that's a really good point, because even though I've habitized some of those things, there are some of those things where it's like, have I cooked those mushrooms? What did I do with the radishes? Like, oh my goodness. Yeah.
And those, I mean, when it comes to stuff like that, that's something that, I just think of the show Russian Doll and like how she's living the same day over and over again, but the food still rots. And it's just kind of like, that's something where if you don't have the willpower to do it, you're going to have a waste, right? Like it's going to show you how much time has passed, even if you are stuck in the present day bias of whether or not I did something.
Yeah.
Same with clutter, or other things like that. But so now
just a little shout out for the show Russian Doll, which season 2 is now dropped, and it's been a while since season 1. And coincidentally, synchronistically, I just rewatched season 1 and finished it last night. So bringing up Russian Doll is very, it ties in well.
There we go. But so now it's time for a quote that I hate because she's right.
Okay. So there was that. one you hated because you hated it and you didn't agree
And
with
I
it.
love to hate it. And
Yeah,
this one
and
I
this
hate.
one because it's
And
right.
yeah. So there's so on TikTok, there's this sound that's trending or that people use, and it's Oprah. And I mean, when isn't Oprah generally quotable and right and motivating?
Yeah.
But it's something along the lines of no one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to
That
willpower, when it
sucks.
comes to discipline, as much as we talk about reaching out for support, which absolutely do that, building your network, there are some things that only you can write your book. Only I can go for a run, right?
Yes.
Like there are some things that you have to build that internal flame to the point that when your accountability partner isn't available, when your gym coach isn't around, when you're on vacation, when you're sick, you're still going to get it done, right? Or you're still going to nurture it and grow it. And so I came up with a formula, or I'm starting to come up with a formula. So I'm just wondering, like, for you, because you do have a lot of fire in you, right? Like you wake up and decide, like, I'm going to be a happy person today, even if I don't feel like it, right? I'm going to go bless my house. I'm going to build these habits. I'm going to do all these things.
Yeah.
So like, do you have a perfect formula to achieve everything you want to in a day?
Angel wings and unicorn horns and pixie dust. I don't know. I don't know.
Jesus take the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. No, I had never thought of a formula. I think for me, it was just like sort of scrappiness. Like, let's just put these things together. And sometimes the things that I do try to do are very scrappy, like, because if I take the time to learn it the right way, then I won't continue with it.
Too deep dive into
yeah.
So I love scrappy. That's great. I call upon tenacious Tracy, right? Like I've talked in the past about how like I just get through life on pure tenacity. Tenacious T. I just get through life on pure tenacity sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But the reason I have to do that is because I don't always have the discipline, the willpower, the motivation, whatnot. Or like I was talking about in the last episode, the moxie.
Yeah.
So I decided moxie is going to be greater than motivation, but they're both less than discipline. Right.
Okay. So moxie is the top, right?
I think discipline is.
Oh, discipline is the top.
Yeah.
And then
I think what I'm trying
moxie.
to really say here is you can't wait to be motivated. That your moxie, scrappiness, your tenacity, your persistence, right? Like it's the personality or that Sasha Fierce persona that you put on. That is just that I'm doing this tooth and nail, right? Like we're going to see this through. But that ultimately it's the discipline that will be your greatest. It's the most needed for this formula to be successful.
Yes. I now that I hear it like that, I agree. And I feel like once you have the discipline, you can just put that moxie coat on, right? You can just put that,
the moxie
then it's then it's easier to just step into that as well. If you've got the discipline down. My mom used to always say, I would ask her, like, you are so funny during your talks. How do you do that? And she said, I write my talks without any humor in them. And then I practice them and practice them and practice them until they're memorized. Then I'm on the stage. I have my talk memorized, which actually allows me to react and respond to the audience and to come up with these things and to throw it back out to the audience. So her discipline allowed space for her moxie to come through.
That. I also love, like, let's say you don't feel like the most disciplined person. Practice in discipline, right? Like how many of us as adults forget we have to practice? I think we have a whole episode on that in the past about, I don't like to struggle in public, people, but with your discipline, you could, let's say you don't feel disciplined. Let's say you don't have everything in place yet to do it. Just practice as though you were someone with discipline. But yeah, so to me, motivation and willpower are sisters, right?
Okay.
They're not twins, but they're sisters. And so you can't depend on those to push you through. You have to have your discipline in place. So for me, when looking at like a formula, right? Like I kind of think of like the who, what, where, when, and why of it.
Okay.
So the who, it's me and possibly any other stakeholders that are involved. The what and the where is my goal, my desired end state. But my intention is my how. So how am I going to do it? Right? Am I going to do it with grace? Am I going to,
okay. That kind of how.
Scrappy about it, right? Like
yeah,
that
I like that.
And then the action I take is my when it'll happen. That I can't.
This is brilliant,
right? So you can come up with like, I'd be interested in what other people's formulas are for how they're going to try and stay focused on whatever they're trying to do. Because, we talk all the time, we're not like the Tony Robbins of the world or some other self-help book publishers. I'm just not going to give them the
I'm just laughing because in my show notes, I referenced Tony Robbins.
Exactly. But so we're not going to sit up here and pretend like we do this all the time and we have it figured out, right? Like we're trial and error over here too. But so I just think about what do you want more than anything? And why don't you have it yet?
Wow.
And so we're still in business, right? So you're still Amy, LLC, right?
Yeah. Yes, so I am.
You've done your SWOT analysis.
You know what? I was just revisiting that, my gap analysis and the things that I need to do to get past that gap. And looking again at my opportunities and even creating opportunities from my weaknesses. I was just doing that this last week.
Brilliant. So if maybe you're not quite there yet, or maybe you don't have that much time to really like do your formal risk analysis on your life, right? To do the SWOT analysis. Amy mentioned the gap analysis, but like you could do the 5 whys.
Yeah.
Right. So what do I want more than anything? Why do you want it? And then once you have that answer, ask yourself why again. Once you have that answer, why again? And you keep answering why for every answer you come up with.
You just drill down on that. It's an amazing, amazing practice to do.
So yeah, what do you, and then another question you could ask, or you could ask this instead, is why don't I have it yet? And you can get to that root cause of why you don't have it yet. And then you can look to your formula, or you can write your formula so that you can be successful, because clearly willpower isn't going to work all the time.
Yeah, I feel like too, answering that, why don't I have it yet, might actually open your eyes up to the obstacles that are right in front of you that you could possibly do something about.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So then that's the other piece, is you can audit your internal controls, Amy. You can
tell you, I just love this.
I love this. We're a business. So you can look at, your answers to those 5 whys and are you doing what's required? Like, let's say you're a business, there's going to be some federal requirements you have to follow. There's going to be some best business practices, things like that. So then you can look at, if for this to happen or for this to get better, am I doing everything required? And then you can also look to it and be like, where's their waste? Like you said, like sometimes you deep dive so much into the research, analysis paralysis happens and you don't do the thing, or you get distracted and you do something else, right? So like, where are your wastes occurring and how can you be more efficient about it? How can you get rid of it? Where do you need support, right? What can you outsource? What do you need to lean on others for? And are there obstacles? Crush them. Like Netflix crushed Blockbuster, right? Like you don't have to do it first, but you do have to be the best at it. So figure out what's in your way of what you want more than anything, right? Like you want it more than anything. Why don't you have it yet?
I'm a little silent over here because I'm asking myself that in my head. Amy, why don't you have it yet? And now I'm like, crap, I got to answer that. I got to dig deep into this other aspect of being an LLC. Super interesting.
And this is, I mean, we talk sometimes about how like sometimes you don't feel your brightest. And so listening to a show like this might give you anxiety, or maybe you just don't want to do it because you don't want to be your best, right? You don't want to be your brightest. But like in this moment, I'm going to ask you to have the discipline to not wait until you feel like you're in a place to answer these questions. I once had a therapist who we were kind of like, we had finished one area of my life and we were kind of talking about what's going on and like where I want to end up. And he's like, okay, I hear 5 themes we could explore. Pick one. And he listed them off. And I was like, this one feels really abrasive. Let's start there.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Right?
And I feel though, I wonder how many people can do that, but I like that challenge to give to people to say, if this doesn't feel like the right time to start this, just try starting it. Push back on that a little bit.
Yeah. When it comes to like the willpower and the motivation and the why don't I have it yet? Nothing changes if nothing changes. Right. And so maybe I'm not telling you to be ready to have a new routine in place and to tackle the thing that you want most in life in this moment. I'm just asking, like, can you do this exercise? Can you deal with feeling uncomfortable about why you don't have it without shame, right? Like with compassion and grace and forgiveness in your heart for yourself, right? Like no blame, no judgment, just do the exercise. What do I want most? Why do I want it? And why don't I have it?
I love that. Thank you so much, Tracy.
Yeah,
I love this topic.
That's just me getting mad at the Dalai Lama.
And a little bit at Oprah too.
Yeah, but she's Oprah.
I know. That's true. Thanks so much. So if this episode spoke to you or your soul, please share it with a friend. If you've got some time, give us love on your preferred platform with a rate, review, and subscribe. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day.